In the last video, we detailed how to create a line using the curve menu and the command prompt. In this video, we'll take this line and we're going to make it into a square. While you could easily go up to curve and down to rectangle, in this video, we'll create the square using commands like copy, and we'll use the object snaps as well. So it'll be a chance to get to know those better. So in that last video, we drew a vertical 3-inch line, and so we'll continue to use that in order to create a 3-inch by 3-inch square. I'm going to zoom in and recenter my line. And now if I wanted to create the next side of that, we use the line command from the curve dropdown. But in this video, I'll use a couple different methods of creation in case you find one that seems better suited to your style of working. So one of the other ways that I'll go about creating geometry is to not use the toolkit or the menu altogether. I'll leave them out and I can simply begin typing a command. Once I've done a few of them a number of times, you can start to memorize the names of the commands. And you can also find in your course packet that there is a list of commands that you can reference. So in the case that you want to be able to quickly type them in, as I'm doing now, I started typing in line, and it picked up in the command prompt in the top left. Again, even though I hadn't even clicked there, my command still picks up there. And I get a long list of possible options for how to create a line below that. I want the first one. I could come up here and click on that, or I could just, following my typing, I can just say enter. And remember that any information that we are manually typing into the command prompt line, we always have to follow it up by saying enter. So we get a very similar prompt that we got before. When we went to create our line, we have Rhino asking us for the start of the line, and we have some of these additional information options here, but we're still not going to work with those. What we are going to work with now will be our object snaps. So I detailed those in the very first video where we talked about Rhino's interface. And those object snaps, if you're in PC, can be found horizontally along the bottom left. And if you're in a Mac version, you'll find them in your bottom left, right below your toolkit here. And the ones that we'll work with for now will be end and mid. And actually, I guess we don't need mid after all. So I'm going to uncheck everything that I'm not going to use for now. Sometimes it can be limiting to have too many of these on at once. With my end snaps toggled on, I can also come down here to my toggle snaps in the very bottom where I found ortho in the last video, and I can toggle the button for OSnap to automatically turn all of those off or to turn them on if I need to. And again, if you're in a Mac version, you'll find this menu in your kind of center top up here where I've got all of these icons. So now that I know that my end snap is checked here, I can go ahead into my line command and I can hover my start point at the top left of my vertical line that I created in the last video. And as I hover my cursor over that end point, I can see that the end snap sort of magnetizes, and I can see the tag of it next to my cursor alerting me that I'm using my endpoint snap. So I can go ahead and click there and place that. And just as a quick explanation why I may want to use these object snaps, this is a nice way to fully ensure that my geometry is connected from endpoint to endpoint, so that way if I draw something more complex later on, like a floor plan or a potential design that I want to print out, I can join everything together and ensure that these objects are all fully connected as a series of lines. So now that I've got that start point connected to my endpoint here, once again, Rhino wants me to, it's asking me for the endpoint, but it wants me to choose a direction for my line. And because I've still got my ortho toggled on down here in the bottom, again, if you're on Mac, ortho is going to be in the top right here. I'm locked to 90-degree increments, which is what I want. I want to create something perpendicular that has a 90-degree angle here for creating a equilateral square. I know that I want my line to be 3 inches long, so I'll go ahead and, even though Rhino is not asking me specifically for the measurement, I know that I can plug that in now, so I'll hit 3 on my keypad, and I'll say enter to confirm that measurement. And so now that I've typed in my 3 inches, I can see that my line is updated. I can drag my cursor out and I see an extension, but overall I see how long my line is as well. So once I've got that, I still need to click and place the direction of my line. So even though it may appear done, it's still not done until the command line goes back to its starting point. So it's still asking me for end of line. So I'll click to place my line going to the right. And so now I've got two sides of my four-sided shape that I want to create. I could continue going around and creating lines in order to finish off my square, but instead I'll show the copy command. And so what I'll do in order to copy this, like most things you do on your computer now, you could use Control-C and Control-V to copy and paste. I'll do that real quickly just to show what it does. I'll do Control-C and I'll follow it with Control-V. And it doesn't look like there's been a noticeable change made, but when I go to select on my lines here in the top horizontal lines, I now have what's called my object stack pop up. And within my object stack, it's now Rhino is prompting me to choose which of two lines that are directly on top of each other I'm hoping to select. So when I use the Control-C, Control-V on my keypad, it directly copied and pasted on top of the object that was already there. Sometimes if you're using Rhino for fabrication, that can be a dangerous thing because you may end up with extra lines that you didn't want, and it could cause machines to cut twice. And you may not always want that. It can take more time. So I have to now, before I can do anything else, I have to select one of these two lines. I'll go ahead and just pick one, they're the same. And if I want to get rid of it, I'll hit the delete key on the keyboard. So that's one way to copy and paste. The other way that is sometimes a little easier if you're trying to copy to specific geometry points would be to use the copy command. And so in order to use the copy command, I can look in my toolkit, and I've got down here a series of 5 small squares that will use the copy command for me if you're looking for it in the toolkit. So there's 1 gray one and 4 blue squares there. I could also just type it into the command line. So I can type in COPY and say enter. And because I typed in that command with this line already selected, it automatically knew that I wanted to copy this line. If I hit the escape key or just click to deselect off in the side of my screen, again, the escape key will both take me out of my command that I'm currently in. So if I started it too soon and I wasn't ready, I can hit escape, or if I want to deselect the object, I can hit escape. So if I type in copy with nothing selected, the first prompt that I'll get is to select an object to copy. So whether you want to go into the command with your objects pre-selected or you choose to do it after you start a command, it will get you the same result. You'll just find which one feels most appropriate for your working style. So once I've selected the object I want to copy, I could select multiple if I wanted to. Rhino is telling me to press enter when done. If I'm just doing this one, I'll go ahead and say enter. That's all I needed. And then I can pick a point to copy from. And so what Rhino is asking me now is essentially, where do you want to pick this shape up from? And I'll use some geometry that I can easily reference. So if I know that I've got a horizontal line here on the top that I want to copy to the bottom, the point that I have in common with both of these is the endpoints of my vertical line. So I'll use my object snaps on with endpoint, and I will grab from my top left corner. And now the command prompt shifts and it says point to copy to. So now I can come down to my bottom and I can snap on the endpoint there. The end has shown up next to my cursor, so I know that it's snapping. And I can click to place a copy of my line. And so if I pull my cursor out of the way, I can see that I've now got a grayed out original, a currently highlighted shape where I within my cursor, and then I've got my copy down here on the bottom. And it's worth noting that as many times as I click, Rhino will continue to generate copies for me until I hit done on a Mac or just say enter on my PC keyboard. So now I can see I've got my 2 horizontal lines, my 1 vertical line, and then I've got a series of extra copies that I made up at the top. Again, if I don't want those, I can select them. I can draw a window selection over them, and I can hit the delete key. So we'll do copy one more time in order to finish off the side of our square here. I'll select my vertical line. I will type in copy. I'll choose a point to lift it up from. And so I'll pick a common point that I have here is my endpoints. So I'll use my top left corner of my line. I'll pick it up from there, and I'll use that same point to place it on the opposite side where I want it. And I will click to place, and I can say enter when done. And then I can hit escape or click on my screen to deselect all of my geometry. So by that point, I've now got a fully connected square. All 4 of my lines are connected at endpoints. I could zoom in and see that as far as I need to, and see that there's no gaps here because I was using my object snaps in order to precisely put all of my pieces together. The one thing that I'll find in my square now is that all of my sides are disjointed. So the last step that I would have in finishing off this square is to join all of these sides together so that it is a continuous object and shape all the way around. We haven't talked about the object properties in the bottom right screen, but this is a good time to bring them up because they can be a nice way to easily see whether I've got open or closed geometry, meaning whether I've got singular shapes or a continuous line that goes all the way around. In this case, with all of these lines being separate from one another, the object properties refers to them as an open curve. Once I join them all together, they'll be known as a closed curve, meaning it's continuous shape. In order to join these together, I'll select them, and I can either draw a window selection over all of them, or I can hold the Shift key and select them one by one. And joining is also a command. So if I come over to the side here, I've got 2 puzzle pieces linking together. That's my join command. Or I could just type in join, J-O-I-N, and say enter with all of those objects selected. And if I look right above my command prompt, I can see 4 curves joined into one closed curve. So Rhino's telling me now that all of these lines joined together and created a seamless continuous shape. And while it's selected, I can come down to my object properties, and I can see that Rhino's now referring to all of these 4 lines as a closed curve. So if I were to use a machine to cut this out, such as a laser cutter or a CNC router, it would cut continuously all the way around. And I can no longer select these lines as individual shapes. They're now parts of a whole. If I did want to get back to them as individual forms, I could alternatively, right next to my join command, I've got an explode command. So I could also type in the explode and do the opposite of join, which is to break them all back down into individual shapes. So again, I can select everything and join so long as they were attached using object snaps. And that would give me a closed curve, or I could explode it if I needed to edit it or change anything.